to the Celtic Way morning briefing. With us today is Alison McConnell. How's things, Alison?
Not too bad, thanks, Sean. You?
Aye, not bad. Aye, good. Before we start, usually Tony's bag this, but a wee word for our sponsors. One Football. As we always say, the app is totally free. The link's in the description. It's a one-stop shop for all your footballing needs. You've got news, fixtures, oppositions, some stats. It's available on Apple, Android, etc., etc. So, as always, we thank them for their sponsorship. And as you can see down the bottom of the screen there, we're running a special offer just now that's 30 days of full access to the website for free. So if you go to www.celticway.co.uk/subscribe, and I'll put a link in the description, then you'll be able to take advantage of that. And yes, I am massively biased, but it is worth it. So, Alison, now that that's out of the way, Celtic have been linked with what feels like umpteen players in the past day or two. The latest one of those is Ferencváros forward Ryan May, who's a Morocco international and actually played against Celtic earlier this season. But there was also reports the club is monitoring Man City duo Taylor Harwood-Bellis and Ko Itakura. Now, the former is a centre-back who spent last year on loan at Stoke City. Actually plays left centre-back, which is somewhere a fair few people have been commenting in recent weeks saying that's kind of where they need to strengthen. And Itakura plays centre-back, but has also played defensive mid for a while. He was on loan at Schalke. But without, and I really want to avoid just constantly sitting here day in, day out discussing reports, Alison. So what I want to ask you is actually, what does repeated interest in centre-backs tell you about the future of, for instance, Stephen Welsh and Christopher Julian?
Yeah, I think Christopher Julian would be the one that I think maybe looks as though his time is up, surprisingly. I think this time, even 5-6 months ago, you might still have been saying he was the best centre-half available at the club when he was fully fit. But I think he played, 16 minutes of a Scottish Cup tie against Raith Rovers. That was his only involvement. And I think he has subsequently made clear that he was fit and available for selection, but unable to dislodge Carl Starfelt and Cameron Carter-Vickers. Given the fact that Celtic are clearly keen to keep hold of Cameron Carter-Vickers, you do wonder where Julian would fit in now, where he would go. I thought he cut a for loan figure on the day that Celtic won the league, and they all came out and obviously celebrated on the pitch, and he kind of kept himself at a distance. Understandable, I think, if you've not made a contribution over the course of the campaign, but he kind of had a walk himself round the pitch just when the stadium was starting to empty a bit, and you just wonder if it might be that his time is up. Stephen Welsh, I think, is different. I think he's still young enough. I think he's played sporadically in spells. I think a loan move may be a consideration for him, but also I think you need to still have other centre-halves at the club. I don't think you can only just rely on two, particularly when you consider that it'll be a very intense opening few months of the campaign. I think the only midweek game dates that are available when the season's back up and running is for international weeks. I think because of the timing of the World Cup this season, the Champions League games are concertina, Julian, into these opening few months to make sure that the games are played before the World Cup starts. So it's a very intense schedule. So I'd be wary of offloading too many players, even if they are first-team squad players rather than starters.
We've got different views on a few things in the comments here, not least Stephen Welsh, as Tim Anon says there, but Liam Scales, on the subject of left-footed centre-backs, Scales has only played really left-back for Celtic, but he said just before he joined Celtic, centre-back was his kind of preferred position. He is left-footed. Now, I don't know your own opinion on Liam Scales. I don't think he's really shown enough yet. That's not to say that he won't, but he hasn't yet. But there's kind of different opinions in the comments here. Michael McDonald saying he thinks Scales could come good, whether that's left back or left centre back, he doesn't mention. But alternatively, Frank Brennan completely not good enough and no future at Celtic Park. But on the subject of kind of defenders and stuff, you mentioned Stephen Welsh possibly going on loan, and we'll come to another wee section later where you might expand on it a wee bit more. But just in terms of Stephen Welsh specifically, none of the rest of the defenders, he played quite a lot when you actually consider the minutes, and I know it was mostly in fact it was almost all the first half of the season last year. So surely and this is my opinion on it, that it doesn't really benefit him to stay and just be a backup, which is probably what it would be. But the question for me is, where do you loan him? Do you loan him within Scotland, or do you loan him elsewhere?
Yeah, it's an interesting one. I think I absolutely appreciate what you're saying. I think the stage he's at of his career, he will want to play. I think he needs to play regularly. I think a positive loan spell can be huge for players in terms of their development. I sometimes think too there's a level of scrutiny at Celtic that can be difficult to come into for the opening months of your career, really. And if you look at the likes of Callum McGregor and a very successful loan spell down south with Notts County, and I think it can develop players. I think it's very important to play a full season to be getting access and exposure to the demands of first team football on a regular basis. And I think he'll know that himself more than anyone. And I think the fact that he played so often in the first few months of the season will have whet his appetite for it. I think he'll be reluctant to drop back again and not have that competitive element. I think he needs it for his development. I'm not sure that Celtic would be ready to sever ties with him just yet, so I think a loan move could be beneficial to both parties.
Got a comment from Tim on here about the kind of Man City reports, the links with Man City players. Don't really want to be a development team for Man City, loan with an option to buy it, or basically no loan at all. I can kind of see the point there, but the question that comes from me with these Man City links isn't so much the players themselves as it is, do you think maybe people are making too much of the City group link when Mark Lawwell hasn't actually started his role yet, as far as we're aware?
I think it's been a fairly long-standing arrangement over the last 10 years or so, maybe not quite as long as that, but yeah, I think it's been beneficial at times. I do think if you want to be building solid foundations, I think you want a very open mind when it comes to accessing players, scouting players, developing players, bringing players in. I think Celtic have had a very positive business model, way more than across the last decade, of buying young, talented players, offering exposure to first-team football, European football, and then allowing them to develop their career and go on elsewhere at significant profit. And it's a business model that's worked well in terms of keeping the club on a very solid financial footing, whilst also maintaining a level of domestic success. I think it's important that you don't have too many loan players. I think it gives you a headache when you get to this stage. If you look at Jota and Cameron Carter-Vickers, both have been integral to the campaign, the season as a whole. There is a real clamour now, a real desire on the part of Celtic to have them tied up and confirmed as permanent players. And I think it looks positive at the minute. It certainly looks as though it's moving in that direction, but it doesn't always transfer like that. And sometimes what happens is that you're left with a hole, and you're in the latter stages of a window trying to arrange cover and bring in players. So I think it's a lot about it is organisation. I think it's about a wide net and having options for the kind of player that you that fits the profile of what you need, and having more than your eggs all in one basket.
Kookaburra making a point about everybody thought Ralston at this stage last year wouldn't be good enough. Like, you give Welsh another year on the back of that. He's right in the sense that they need cover for so many games, and I've made this point since virtually the first weeks of the season, based on the fact that it's Ange Postecoglou's own philosophy, not the fact that it's just my opinion, that centre-back is where he won't be rotating. So maybe the odd cup game for the backup centre-backs next year, but I don't really expect there to be many games where it's not the first-choice centre-back pairing playing as long as they're fit. And I think you've seen that with the downturn in Welsh's minutes this season. After playing so much at the start, once it became clear it was Starfelt and Carter-Vickers were going to be the first-choice pairing, there was virtually no opportunities after that, and sometimes he wasn't even getting into the squad. So I do take that point that they do need cover, and I agree, you mentioned it already, that whoever comes in centre-backs or wherever, there will be a lot of games, but I just feel that centre-back is probably the one area of the team, maybe apart from goalkeeper, where the rotation game isn't going to affect it as much.
Yeah, and I think you see the sense in that. I think having a secure backline comes a lot from understanding your partner and understanding the people you're playing alongside. And I think I think that can be very important just for stability across the back line, to have a very regular back four. I think it lends itself to a particular success that way, and I would agree with you. I don't think there will be much rotation. The only thing that you would counter is by saying any injury issues could be a headache. But I would agree with you. I think if Carter Vickers signs on a permanent deal, I think you know just now what your centre back pairing is. Full backs, I think, maybe isn't quite so obvious. I think if Juranovic is fit, he plays at right back. Greg Taylor, I think that, again, the club have been linked with a couple of left backs in the window. I think that's still a question mark there, although I think he had a very strong campaign, particularly the second half of the campaign. But I would agree. I think you don't really want to be chopping and changing with a central defence. And I think even from a goalkeeper's perspective, I think they like to play with the same back line in front of them too, just to develop relationships and understanding when it comes to anticipating things, when it comes to knowing how someone where they like the ball, how they like the ball, anticipating what comes next.
Right. So what I want to do next, Alison, is this, right? Do you remember playing Duck Duck Goose in primary school?
I'm too old to have played Duck Duck Goose, but I remember my kids playing it in
nursery. Right, okay. Well, this is like that, except neither of us needs to run about, right? It's called Keep Sell. So I'm just going to hit you with names, and all I want you to do is tell me will Celtic keep them or sell them, and sell, release, loan, whatever, right? I just want to see where you think we're at with a few of the players, right? So you don't even need to justify it if you don't want to. You can just give your opinion, but the easy ones to go with right away are the ones who are about a contract. So Karamoko Dembele.
I think Celtic will sell him.
Kerr McInroy.
I think Celtic will sell.
Christopher Julian.
I think he will go.
There's a theme development here. Volleyball and goalie.
Will go.
Jonathan Afolabi.
Yeah, I think we've not seen much at all. Sporadic glimpses, but no, I think he will go.
Luca Connell.
It's an interesting one. What age is he?
Luca Connell. I want to say 22, but I don't know. Hold on. 21.
21. I think sometimes for the players themselves, I think they get to an age where they know they have to play. They've got to go and develop and get first team football. On that basis, I've not seen much of the boy at all, but purely on that basis of wanting to play, given the age he's at, I would suggest that he would probably go.
This is where I think Frank Brennan's ears will perk up. Albin Ayeti
will go.
Vasilis Barkas
will go, but there's a caveat there because obviously the financial terms that here on are good, and you know you're really hoping that someone comes in and makes an offer that's agreeable to both parties. But if it's not, what's he got to lose by sitting tight and seeing out his contract and banking money? But I think Celtic will be keen to free him up, to get him off the wage bill. He's not going to play. I think it makes sense to move on.
Similarly, is Miller Sorrow. I think that's a difficult one.
I think he'll go.
I think so.
Again, I think there is so much competition in that area of the pitch. I think Celtic have an abundance of midfield players. I don't think we've seen enough of him. I think he will probably go.
Well, Kookaburra making a good point. I've actually got a couple of more names, but that is the question. That's kind of what you're alluding to with Barkas, isn't it? That it's not necessarily will Celtic seek to release them, but will actually someone pay for them, that kind of thing. That maybe doesn't apply to the likes of the people that are out of contract now, but anybody else who's got a contract longer than like the next couple of weeks is that applies to it. I would agree. Last couple, and I think I know your answer for all three of these. Scott Bain.
I think keep Scott Bain. I think he's been a reliable deputy. I think I would hang on to Scott Bain.
We kind of talked about him last week, I think it was, and I can't remember if it was Rob McCune made the point that ideally he wouldn't be your backup to Joe Hart. You would want someone maybe closer to Joe Hart's ability, or even maybe better than Joe Hart to come in. But the fact that Scott Bain got a new contract suggests that is going to be he is going to be the backup, and he is quite happy to be the backup. And Celtic were quite happy with that. That as the kind of the makeup of the goalkeeper position.
I think it's very difficult too. I know what you're saying about bringing in a comparable goalkeeper in order to push Joe Hart and keep it competitive, but I think it's very difficult to keep two goalkeepers like that happy. I think it's very hard if you've got two who are genuine number ones that both are satisfied.
I agree. I think it's arguably the most difficult position in a squad. And I realise they always say goalkeepers are different breeds and they support each other. Sometimes it's not the case. They're still human beings. Some of them do want to play and do have designs on getting into a team. I think maybe that's why you've seen Scott Bain getting a contract, because he's probably quite happy being Celtic's backup keeper. Whereas others might not be. And that also keeps the harmony going within the squad and all of that. I think it all ties into it. Sometimes you're right. Sometimes the backup keeper is better being quite clearly the backup keeper rather than a challenger for the number one jersey. But that said, I do take the comments like that one, which it does keep someone sharp if you've got somebody waiting in the wings who is capable of playing in your position. Last couple, quite similar to these guys actually. I think Adam Montgomery.
Yeah, I think Celtic will. I think they'll want to keep him. See how he got on up at Aberdeen. Have a look at him after he's had a bit of first team football. I think he's another one. I'm not sure what age he is. He maybe 20, 19 or 20. Again, a possibility of maybe another loan spell if he's not going to play regularly. He would be at a stage again. I think he needs to keep playing and keep developing.
He's 19. He's just turned. He's just about to turn 20 in July. So yeah, he's still young. He's also, you've got to remember, he was a winger as well when he first came through. He's playing left back when he was actually in the first team. He kind of played left wing again at Aberdeen for a while. So he's young, but he's also in that weird period of trying to figure out exactly where he's going to play in senior football as well. Last name. Sorry, what you going to say?
I was just going to say, I actually saw him a few times for Aberdeen this season. And I think it'll have done him good just to have played in a team like that have struggled. Almost, I think you can learn quite a bit when you're in an environment like that. I think 19 going on 20, I think the possibility of another loan spell, but I think Celtic will definitely hang on to him.
Last one I'm going to throw at you, Dane Murray, who obviously we haven't seen since in the first team since the very, very start of the season.
Yeah, again, what age is he?
Dane Murray, he's even younger as far as I remember. He's just about to turn 19. 19 now, exactly a month actually.
Yeah, I think Celtic will probably keep him, see how he develops. Again, I do think you want to give young players at this stage game time. And if you're not going to get it, it might come down to the individual saying, I really want to go and play. Does that take the form of a loan or is it a permanent move? But I think when you get to 19, 20, you need to be playing. You need to. And I think sometimes you've seen it before that young players hang around a bit too long at Celtic and don't get in. And I think their career and their development suffers because of it.
That brings me, this is probably, you could count this as the longest segue ever, but this brings me to the next topic, because a lot of those players, or a few of those players anyway, the game time that they got this season was mostly B-team level. And that brings us to the reports. I think it was Stephen McGowan of Mailsport today reported that Celtic B might not actually be playing in the Lowland League again after all, because the league had voted to admit two guest sides, which was presumed to be Celtic and Rangers as B teams. But then Hearts threw in an application, and all three of those teams have essentially said it's all of us or none of us. So first of all, what's your thoughts on the B teams in the Lowland League in general? But secondly, and perhaps more importantly, what impact could that have if they don't play in the Lowland League next season? Is it just a case of more loans out, or is it seriously detrimental to some of those players that we mentioned?
Yeah, I think it's important to play. I think that first and foremost, any kind of competitive football for these guys is good. Obviously, there's no reserve league now like there used to be, where it maybe wouldn't have been the same as competitive football, but I think it offered some aspects that were positive in the development. I think I can see both sides of the Highland League argument, but I think from Celtic's point of view, Rangers, Hearts' point of view, it's scope to offer competitive men's senior football for players that can be incredibly important to their development. And I think there would be a level of frustration if they're not replicating it again this season.
I think it's a good point. I suspect if they don't sort this out, I think it will end up with a heap of loan deals, because there is a difference between the playing in the Lowland League and playing, if some of them will still qualify for the kind of youth teams. There is a difference. They always say, men's football and stuff, but there is a difference between playing that level and playing with youth levels, and I think it would lead to maybe not Man City, Chelsea levels of outgoings and loans, but I think you would find a lot of those players would need to go on loan to keep that kind of level up.
Yeah, I would tend to agree. I think, and I think the club would want them to be playing more often. I think the club would want them to be getting a taste of that, of competitive football.
Retro Celtic. I think once you've thrown your oar in with a couple of other teams and said it's all or nothing, you kind of back yourself into the corner of not being able to just go out and say, well, actually take us after that. But it's interesting to see what will happen, because it will affect, and I think it genuinely will affect the futures of some of these players that we've mentioned, but also ones that were doing well in the B team and subsequently promoted when the going got tough last year, like Owen Moffat, players like that, Joey Dawson. I know they didn't appear all that often, but part of the reason they did appear, and part of the reason that Ange Postecoglou mentioned them coming up to train with the senior team, I realise Lowland League is senior technically, but you know what I mean, the first team, was because of their performances at that level. I don't quite know if that's the case, if it's back to youth football for a few of them. So I'll be watching that one. I think it's very, very interesting. But before we go, Alison, this is just for my own kind of, I'm just curious. Today is the anniversary of the day that Martin and Alison side won the treble in 2001. By beating Hibs 3-0 in the Scottish Cup final. Jackie McNamara with the opener, and then of course the customary couple of Henrik Larsson goals. Now, you were working at the club back then, so basically I've always wanted to ask you, it's the first treble since 1969, Martin O'Neill coming in, swept all before him right away. Just what was it like being in amongst that?
It was really good fun. It was it was a really fun environment to work in. I think I had 2 years before that at the Scottish Sports Agency, like covering lots of lower league clubs and doing multiple orders, and it was a really fantastic grounding. And then I was offered a job at Celtic, just as the internet was really becoming more of a regular thing. We were just shifting over into a digital look at sport, and it was really good fun. I think Martin and Neil was fantastic to deal with. He was just so he couldn't have been any more helpful for us. He was always available. Well, he was always available. Maybe 3 days after, like you were trying to get him. But no, he was fantastic. He was really keen to create an atmosphere and an environment where everyone was included in it, where you were part of it. And he would sometimes come up, like maybe before a Christmas night out or something, come up and say, look, there's a few quid for your kitty if you're all going out tonight. And yeah, fantastic to deal with. And some really big personalities in the dressing room at that time too. And it was just good fun. As a journalist, it was fantastic. Sometimes I think to go behind the curtain to get a glimpse of things in the background, it was pretty... it could be quite eye-opening at times, but it was certainly a lot of fun. It was really... And I had only just joined in the September after Martin O'Neill had arrived. So it was on the back of course, of an incredibly disappointing season. It was on the back of an awful collapse the season before. They'd lost the league by 21 points, and there was a number of players that were all still there. Paul Lambert, Stelian Petrov, Lubomir Moravcik, and just the shift in mood very quickly around the club, and it was a really fun time to be part of it. The first time as well then that following summer that they went into the Champions League. They beat Ajax in the playoff, went through the Champions League. And I always remember actually the first game that Celtic were supposed to play in the Champions League was against Juventus, and 9/11 happened and the game was postponed obviously. And I actually think I might still have a programme somewhere of the game that was never played. I can't remember if we actually went to print with it or not. I'm sure we did, because I think it was called off. I think it was a Tuesday the game was called off. But it was just a fun time. It felt very positive. There's a lot of positive energy about the club, and I think, like anything, if you have a winning team, and it's always easy to speak to people when things are positive, or I think it's easier to camp outside and wait for people to talk to you if they're in a good mood and things are going well. But no, it was really good fun.
We've got actually a feature interview on the website today. Tony got Ramon Vega, who basically came up to Scotland for 5 months, played 26 games, won all 3 trophies. But the club and the city clearly left a big impression on him, and he kind of basically what you said there about the atmosphere about the club under Martin O'Neill that he was fostering, and John Robertson was fostering, and Steve Walford and different things. He basically said the camaraderie in that squad in particular was something that he remembers as kind of driving towards that treble. He says they were very aware that it was going to be so historic because Celtic hadn't won it in so long. He says that, and the fact that naturally Larson was sensational. But is that something you remember specifically from that season more than like other seasons?
Yeah, I think what I remember most is Ramon Vega cutting about, like with very little clothes on most of the time. He called him the Greek god. He just loved people to look at him, to be honest. Yeah, he was a shyness, that's for sure. But I think if you have a winning club, a winning team, it spreads through every corner of the club. And I think what you often find at a club like Celtic, and I'm sure it's probably the same at Rangers and Aberdeen and Hearts, is that you have people that have been there for a long, long time, receptionists that have been there for a long time, and canteen workers, cleaners, like marketing, people that have been associated with the club really probably for durations of their career, like long, long spells. And when it had been probably so difficult and so barren for so long, and then they had this great excitement of a successful team, I just think lifted everyone that worked there. It was a really fun part of my career. It was a part I enjoyed hugely, and we had unfettered access. We had real privilege of just going and whoever you want to speak to, if they want to speak to you, that's fine. You just go, you ask, can we speak after training? Again, if they wanted to, they done it. If they didn't, they didn't. But we had a real freedom to go, and real editorial freedom too. And I think we had a super team, really talented team. Stephen Sullivan and I. Stephen Sullivan's now at FIFA. Paul Cuddihy was the editor. Joe Sullivan. It was a really good team, and the media team as a whole were just developing and expanding. But I have some great friendships that are still really rich friendships in my life to this day, because I think you share particular experiences and certain bonds are born when you work so closely. We worked hard. We really used to do some amount of hours and stuff, like do crazy times, but it was good fun. It really was good fun. And I think part of that came with being part of a very warm team.
Patrick McLaughlin, I think we'll end on that, because I'd agree with that. That's maybe childhood bias possibly for me, but I think it's very hard to argue against a team that had Henrik Larsson in it, put it that way. But no, we'll end it there. Thanks for indulging me on that, Alison. I'm sure everybody else enjoyed it as well, judging by the comments. But I've put the link to the Ramon Vega interview in the chat for any that wants to take advantage of, as I said at the start, the special offer that we're running for 30 days for full access, to the website for free, www.celticway.co.uk/subscribe. And as I said at the start, I am massively biased, but I think it is worth it. So for now, thanks for your comments as always, guys, much appreciated, and thanks for your contribution, Alison, and we'll see you all tomorrow.
Pleasure.